Hello and welcome to ESG Unearthed, a collaboration between Future of Mining 365 and Sympact Advisory. My name is Liz Freele, Managing Partner at Sympact, an ESG think tank and consultancy serving the mining industry and beyond. Joining me today, I have Scott Lowe, CEO of ArcelorMittal Liberia, and Hendrik Kuit, Environmental Advisor, to chat mining and biodiversity. Welcome, Scott and Hendrik.
Thank you very much, Liz. Good to be here.
Lovely to have you. So, we learned concretely last year through the WWF's Living Planet report that our world has lost 2/3 of its wildlife in the last 50 years due to human activity. It is a catastrophic loss, and the knock-on effects are a source of pretty serious systemic risk and instability, including for markets and our financial system. So in light of this, biodiversity is rapidly becoming recognized as a material ESG issue. Now, earlier this year, we also saw the announcement of the new Taskforce on nature-related financial disclosure, and we can expect the framework for reporting against that, I heard, to be released at the end of 2022. So this is yet another ESG initiative that will set apart those companies that have taken action on the subject of biodiversity and those who have not, which leads me to the work that ArcelorMittal has been doing in conserving biodiversity in the Nimba Mountains in Liberia. So I'm super excited to learn a bit about this project today. First, I want to ask you, maybe Scott, briefly about the decision to take on a mining project in a biodiversity hotspot in the first place. Like, wouldn't that normally be a deterrent given all the inherent challenges? Did you guys know what you were getting yourselves into when you first took on the project?
Well, thanks, Liz. That's an excellent question, a very important question. Many people may not know that mining has been happening in the Nimba Ranges in Liberia since the 1960s. So there's been a lot of mining, and ArcelorMittal has been present in Liberia and mining for the last 15 years. But mining goes back to the 1960s. Also a lot of logging in Liberia and a lot of other activities that impact on the environment. But in answer to your question, did we know what we were getting into? Of course, we did a very detailed environmental and social impact study before commencing any operations 15 years ago. And out of that came a number of important controls so that we manage the impact to as low as reasonably practicable, the impact on the environment. And one of those is the biodiversity offset areas that we do not mine in. Mm-hmm. And importantly, our business has provided livelihoods for people who would otherwise be dependent upon those forests and need to damage those areas in order to feed their families. So yes, we knew what we were getting into, and we were very confident that we could manage the environmental and social impacts in a very responsible way. And that's what we've been working on for the last 15 years.
Fantastic. So then let's dig into what is the BCP, your Biodiversity Conservation Program? What led to the decision to launch this initiative? How and when was it born?
Well, it's been going for 10 years now, and I'm going to ask Hendrik to explain in more detail. But when I think about our Biodiversity Conservation Program, I think of the 3 M's, management, measuring, and monitoring. When I say we have offset areas that we don't mine in, we don't simply set aside land and say, well, we won't mine there, so we'll leave the forest to be untouched. We don't leave it at that. We actively manage and protect and preserve the area through active management and partnerships with the community and through measurement and monitoring. But Hendrik will elaborate.
Awesome. Hendrik.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. The BCP is a tool that we use to manage the impacts identified that arise from the history. Scott referred to logging and the impacts from LAMCO. Also, impacts are created through community activities, and these combined with our mining potential impacts, we use the BCP as a tool to manage this. Mainly, the BCP can be described as a multifaceted program that not only conserves forests, but also provides an alternative livelihood. Just to why we are referring to alternative livelihood is the concept is that if you limit forest communities' dependence on forest products, you have to provide a source of alternative livelihood. And we do that through a conservation agriculture program where community members are taught how to farm more sustainably. Also, it improves their agricultural production, so they have a bit more food security. And this strongly supports the efforts to conserve high value habitats in the area. And of course, it gives us the opportunity to ensure that these forests remain and even develop further.
Fantastic. And so what are some of the nature-based solutions that are involved in this program?
The nature-based solutions that we refer to, one good example is the introduction and implementation of conservation agriculture, as I mentioned before. Yep. This allows for climate smart agriculture. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There are, however, more opportunities to be explored, which we are currently part of a World Bank pilot project. Mm-hmm. We're looking at creating some guidelines for future projects within forested areas. So we are looking forward to seeing what additional programs we can have, to benefit the overall.
Yeah, I was actually, I was looking forward to asking you guys about the World Bank project. I'll maybe get to that a bit later, but that's a very promising thing. And so as part of the BCP, I understand there's also been an education campaign. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about that? I understand it's small scale farming techniques, cash crops, getting folks to move away from cutting down wood to make coal, something about, I read about forest rangers.
Yeah, so in any program, you have to provide some form of education and awareness. So in all the aspects we have from the conservation agriculture right through to the forest conservation, creating awareness is an important aspect. This is done through education and capacity building to capacitate people to improve on what they do. If it is forest rangers doing biomonitoring or community members applying conservation agriculture, we have to increase the capacity. So that is done in all programs and at all levels. We have implementation partners which run radio programs where they broadcast information in terms of what they are doing and what they are achieving. We also have forest rangers which are being trained in biomonitoring. They get improve their GPS skills, because when they have sightings of something in the forest, say a footprint, they would record the location. And we have to have accurate data. Sure. So capacitate them to ensure that they understand how to use the technology available to increase.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So moving back to Scott, maybe leading something like this, one could say, is really outside of your core business as a steel and mining company. What have been some of the biggest challenges in taking a leadership role in something like this? And on the back of it, could you maybe share some of the solutions that you guys have explored, Hendrik, obviously pop in, that others in the industry could learn from?
Sure, thanks, Liz. I mean, there definitely are challenges. In Liberia, we have challenges with many different community groups and interest groups, and we have different government agencies and different NGOs. There are many, many different stakeholders, and aligning those objectives and getting everybody to agree on the way forward is the major challenge when you're dealing with different groups of people and large numbers of people. But how do we go about managing that challenge and overcoming the challenge there? It's through constant and regular communication and engagement, and we're finding that the more regularly, the more frequently we engage, then we deal with issues as they arise, and it's contributed to the success that we're seeing. So that's the major challenge within Liberia. We also have the added challenge that the Nimba ranges sit on the border between Liberia and Guinea and the Ivory Coast. So we're not only dealing with challenges in the country with many different stakeholder groups, but we're also dealing with international challenges. Hendrik, perhaps you could say a little bit about that.
Yeah, the cross-boundary issues are quite interesting. It arises from, of course, the forests don't have political boundaries like humans do. So it allows, conservation. It needs to take place on both sides of the border. And we have a forum where we interact with both through the FDA on the Liberian side. We also interact with the Ghanaian and Ivory Coast authorities, especially also their conservation community across the border, to make sure that we follow the same principles and also prevent cross-border activities such as farming, hunting. The interesting fact is that in many of these areas, both to the west and the east of our concession, you have family members which live across the borders.
Yeah.
And so there is cross-border travel, frequent travel, and also the strictness of controls on a specific side of the border allows or does not allow hunting and farming activities in certain areas. So you tend to have this migration where people would come in, do hunting or farming, and as soon as you have controls and control, they move back across the border to the other side. So there's a lots of challenges from that. We find it successful when we engage with the counterparts on the other side of the border, and there's a mutual understanding of what needs to be done, and it provides control on both sides, and control provides the security we need.
Right. And so how effective has the program been? What's been key to its success? I should actually ask.
Well, perhaps if I could begin, we're very proud of what's been achieved over the last 9-10 years. We'll be celebrating 10 years next year. So
brilliant.
we're proud of what's been, thank you. We're proud of what's been achieved, but we also know that there's always room for improvement, and that, that expectations are constantly and standards are constantly changing. So so we know that we've got more work to do, but we are proud of the fact that we've been putting this effort in for 10 years. That you can see the success in the level of community involvement, and not only community involvement, but tangible benefits for the community as well, and the measurable impact on the environment, where we're managing to successfully protect the biodiversity and the ecological health of those forests. And Hendrik can give you some examples of that. And we like to think of ourselves as the benchmark in Liberia. There are other conservation areas, but we're proud that others look to us as a benchmark in the country.
Fantastic.
So Hendrik, perhaps you'd like to say a little bit more about our what's been driving our success?
Yeah, I think if we measuring the success of a biodiversity program isn't always as simple as taking out a ruler and measuring the height of it. It's a bit more complicated than that. So what we, if to answer that question of is it successful, we look at certain components. For instance, we have forest patrols in various areas. We have 4 focused offset areas. In all of these areas, patrolling forms a very important part that provides us biodata. So we look at what do the patrols see when they go out. So if they see endangered and threatened species that we expect to be around, then we feel that yes, it is successful because we see them and we know the activities are there. Secondly, from the patrol data, we can we do see and record things like hunting activities and illegal farming. So when we see a decline in those recordings of those activities, we deem it to be successful, and we do see that. You know, based on this, the other key component that can say or confirm that is successful, if you look at the community forests in Liberia, there are about 9 community forests, of which 3 are in our program within the Nimba landscape. So these are seen as being the most successful because it's the only forest, community forest, where patrolling is done, biomonitoring is being done. So we deem that to be a success factor also. Scott also referred to the community involvement. So we have large numbers of community members involved, up to 800 on a yearly basis, where in the conservation agriculture program, we have about 140 community forest guards taking part in patrols. We have the ENNR, which is an FDA controlled and proclaimed nature reserve, where we also support patrolling, but that is done by a joint co-management committee, which has been established by the FDA, which includes both FDA personnel as well as local community members.
And just to clarify, FDA in the Liberia context, for those who don't know, who might be watching.
The FDA is the Forestry Development Authority, which is the
government agency.
The government agency, which is responsible for forests and conservation in Liberia.
Okay.
And the ENNR is the East Nimba Nature Reserve. The East Nimba Nature Reserve.
No ninjas there.
So
awesome.
To conclude on the question if it's successful, yes, it is, because we do see the species which were identified during the early ESIAs, the studies that was done. And the animals that are expected to be seen are being seen. So that for us is the key and the reason why we have the BCP in this area.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And I'm curious to get. Yep. Go ahead.
Sorry, Liz. If I could summarize our success, what are the indicators that our BCP, the Biodiversity Conservation Program, has been successful? We're seeing the rare and endangered species. We're actually measuring them, and we're seeing a reduction in illegal activities like poaching and illegal agriculture. And we're seeing greater numbers of members of the community being involved, and we're seeing positive improvements in food security and livelihoods for those community members. So I'm very pleased with the progress that we've made, but as I said at the outset, we're very conscious that there's always room for improvement.
Totally. Yeah. And what about the importance of partnership? Like, I think about how do we achieve a lasting conservation impact? I assume there's a sort of handover that would be envisioned in the long term to ensure that this good work continues. So what's the role of partnerships in this initiative?
Now, look, that's an excellent question, because we do want to develop and foster local capability and capacity as well through those partnerships. Hendrik, would you like to talk about our partnerships?
Yes, I think the first component to that and the most critical would be the community surrounding our operations. So that, I mean, if without those communities being involved, we will not achieve what we are achieving. So that is the first stakeholder group we have, is all these various communities, and it's a large number of areas, up to 13 communities that we have involved. We also, of course, we have the FDA and the park authorities, the park warden, as a stakeholder, which we engage frequently and directly in a memorandum of understanding to support their management of the park. And we also do have the not the communities, the government authorities, and we do also have implementation partners, local NGOs that we are involved with, that seasoned in taking part in these programs, and also have a long-term relationship with AML, that we have had them for many years, and they are very committed to what we do, and they want to be successful, and they've been key in us helping us implementing and achieving our objectives.
That's very
cool. And we're working on a partnership with the university as well, and so great. all those partnerships come together to build local capacity.
Brilliant. Is it fair to say as well that these kinds of partnerships and programs like this, you find it's contributing to the social license and social acceptability of your operations? Is there a link there?
Yeah, definitely. It really is a license to operate. We know that expectations are changing for mining companies, for all industry, and indeed. So it's definitely a case that once upon a time, I've been in the industry for many decades, and once upon a time, environmental management was really driven by regulation. But I'm pleased to see the change, the transformation in my industry over the years, to the point where we are now, where leading companies like ArcelorMittal are making environmental management the cornerstone of their business strategy.
Yeah, like well above and beyond regulations, right?
Well above and beyond.
Yeah, it's a really cool program. So Hendrik, you mentioned already the World Bank approached you guys. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. What are some of the learnings that they're honing in on to highlight and showcase for the rest of the industry?
I think it's programs like ourselves, and there are, I think, 4 other mining areas that are on the program as well. The practical experience that has been on offer, and the approaches that have been followed, I think that is the key to producing some guidelines for new and other programs that will want to implement the similar approaches to managing their impact. Although it is site specific, we don't always have all the answers, and some of the activities you do provides the results you want, and some will not. This would provide the opportunity to identify the key success factors that in the implementation, and provide also other companies and other programs and projects the opportunity to implement these nature-based solutions. For ourselves, it has been key, it has been successful, and it has provided us, I think, with more than just managing the impact we wanted it to manage. We have had other benefits that we never imagined would be around. And I mean, that's a positive in terms of contributing to the World Bank program, so that these benefits are, are also available.
And so, do I understand correctly, is that part of the World Bank Climate Smart and Forest Smart mining framework?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Very cool. So should we expect like a how-to book on biodiversity conservation for mining at some point in the future?
Look, I think that that you should ask the groups that are implementing the World Bank study. That is where they are heading, is to test their guidelines against existing programs to see how it fits, and then also is to fine tune something that can serve the purpose.
Fantastic. I look forward to seeing whatever gets produced from that work. So, Scott, how does all of this fit strategically into the various standards that the company is increasingly involved in? And in particular, I'm thinking about responsible steel and IRMA. Is the BCP in some way contributing to that?
Oh, look, we're committed to IRMA, and we've established a roadmap for participation, and IRMA is an important part of our strategy going forward. And the BCP is definitely a part of that, but IRMA is actually much bigger than just the BCP. But the BCP is a really important part of it. But look, our overall approach to environmental and social governance and to responsibility, it's fundamental to our business. We understand that expectations are changing, and that it's not only the expectations changing, but the source of those expectations. So we're now seeing that our customers and our investors and the general public are all much more vocal about what they expect from global companies. So we accept that challenge. Our aim is to meet or to exceed those expectations, but we also know that the goalposts are moving, and that this is the world that we're now operating in. And we want to be ahead of the game, and we want to not just settle for compliance. We want to set the standards and to be industry leaders in this critical area.
Totally. I mean, we know that moving towards this green revolution and growing into that next phase for humanity is going to require a lot more mining. And so there's that big question of how do we do this in a way that minimizes the environmental impact as much as possible. So I could envision a world that, I don't know if you guys think about this, talk about this, but you say customers are asking, do you see being able to sell iron ore or steel at a premium because of having a program like this, at site level?
Oh, look, that's a question for the market. I guess the market will find its level, but we certainly want to distinguish ourselves against our competitors by being a leader in this area. I think ultimately it will become a necessity for industry players, if it isn't a necessity already. But we want to distinguish ourselves at ArcelorMittal by leading the industry in these areas.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. Scott, Hendrik, it has been super insightful. Any last thoughts, comments, or advice that you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, look, thanks, Liz. I guess in closing, at ArcelorMittal in Liberia, we've been here for 15 years, but we have a long-term commitment to this country. We're here for the long haul. We're proud of what we've achieved so far, but we've got areas that we can improve, and we're constantly learning, whether we're learning from our partners or learning from other bodies such as the World Bank and those who set international standards. But we accept that challenge. We know that this is where we need to apply our efforts to manage the environment and social impacts, so that we have a long-term future for the country and for future generations.